Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm back another day, another post-draft show, post-draft wrap-up show with the one and only Sterling Bennett. Uh, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but we are here. We are ready to go. Sunburn and all on Sterling. He's got a wedding to get ready for, people. So cut him some slack if he's got a sunburn. And yes, that was a riff on the Stranger Things intro, just in case anybody was wondering about the intro music. Copyright free. I was like, oh, that would make a cool intro to the new intro that was made for me. So yeah, there was a draft about a week ago or so. And I wanted to do a really kind of deep dive on, every pick. And also maybe, if we have time, take a look at some of the UDFAs too as well. So
I'm excited. We got 16 new players joining the Niners this offseason, 8 in the draft, 8 post-draft as UDFAs. So I got scouting reports on every single one of them, the draft class itself, the UDFAs, whatever you want to get into, Aaron. Let's dive into the newest members of the 49ers.
Definitely. Real quick before we do that, do you think the Niners are a better team, the same, worse after the draft?
I know the consensus might say they didn't draft many of the needs they had, mainly, a top tier tackle, a top tier guard. I do think as a whole, they raised the floor of a lot of the positions they had. Receivers, obviously, the depth is there, drafting Pearson, Cowing, getting Dominic Pooney in the building to kind of be your sixth man and maybe a starter down the road if all things go right for him. Even getting Renardo Green. I know San Francisco signed about 3 cornerbacks this offseason, but just raising the floor of many positional groups does strengthen you. Again, I get it. They didn't draft Jordan Morgan. They didn't get Christian Haynes from UConn. They didn't draft Cooper DeJean. I totally understand Niner fans being a little upset about that stuff, but I think as a whole, looking at 11 positions or 11 receiver, running back, cornerback, I think the bottom level, the floor of all those positions has been raised. And if guys get hurt, I don't think there's that much of a fear of if we lose Ayuk and Debo, it's certainly going to hurt, but at least you have somebody else besides just Juwan Jennings and a bunch of nobodies that can actually fill in for you.
Yeah, it was an interesting draft. I don't study up on the draft like I used to, but I pay attention enough. I'm aware of what's going on. And with pick 31 in the first round, the Niners selected wide receiver from Florida, Ricky Pearsall. Interesting, not a big guy, but a quick guy. He looks like a lot of people are giving him a comp to Adam Thielen, maybe Tyler Lockett type player. What was your opinion of the Pearsall pick at end of round 30, round 1? Because I'm thinking tackle, edge rusher. Saw Chop Robinson go to Miami. It's my brother's team. I'm like, there's an edge rusher on the board, I bet you. And he was like, what? And we like high five and stuff. It was like, yep. So that was a lot of people were saying that was the pick that a lot of people were mocking to the 49ers, maybe as an edge player, but that didn't happen. I didn't think they'd go wide receiver. And when they did, like everybody else, I'm like, oh, does this mean something? Is somebody on the move? But what's your opinion on the pick?
Yeah, I was someone that we were sitting there 95-7 the game live on the air going, who is this pick going to be? And I don't know about you, but on Twitter, there was a lot of reports that it was Cooper DeJean. And I was like, okay, like we have a free safety, we have a nickelback. This makes sense. You have a playmaking defensive player. But then when the pick trickled down, we saw was Ricky Pearsall. I kind of laughed because I was someone that, well, yes, I get Niner fans saying it wasn't, a consensus first round talent. I also mocked Ricky Pearsall to San Francisco. I had him trading up for him in the second round. So I was not surprised they at least liked him enough to take him at 31, albeit 31 may have been too rich for me. But I understand falling in love with him at 31, knowing there were teams behind you, the Carolina Panthers, the Buffalo Bills, who traded back, I believe, twice at the end of the first round, they were going to go receiver. Obviously, scheme fit matters, right? Adonai Mitchell doesn't really fit in the scheme if you have Ayuk and Debo there, whereas Ricky Pearsall fits to a T exactly what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. So in regards to it surprising me at 31 a little bit, but I wasn't surprised that San Francisco, mainly Kyle Shanahan, fell in love with the player that is Ricky Pearsall. I wasn't one who thought that because you draft Pearsall at 31, it means Debo Ayuk are gone. I did not believe much of the smoke out there during the draft. Take 2021, albeit it was true. Kyle Shanahan calls LaFleur in Green Bay and says, "Hey, I want Aaron Rodgers. What will it take to get him?" And LaFleur is like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" and hangs the phone up. And so that leads to Trey Lance and whatnot. But there's a lot of things, a lot of phone calls happening during draft day we're never going to know about. So I didn't buy into the Debo or Ayuk trade talk, especially once Jacksonville traded back and got Brian Thomas still in the first round. But in regards to Ricky Pearsall at 31, the player San Francisco is getting, when I tell you that of this receiving draft class that you could say isn't Malik Neighbors, isn't Marvin Harrison Jr., isn't the top 3 or 4 or 5 guys, Ricky Pearsall of that second grouping, the Ladd McConkeys, the Adonai Mitchells, the Xavier Worthies, mind you, who the Chiefs had to trade up to get. I think Pearsall fits the Shanahan scheme more than any of those players. And all due respect to them, I just don't think the rest of those guys fit exactly what Shanahan wants to do in San Francisco when it comes to being precise with the routes, being a great separator, and being on time and consistently giving a quarterback a target. That's what Pearsall did at Florida with 3 different quarterbacks in his college career. So he knows what it takes to, when your quarterback goes down, not just once, but twice, how to work with the quarterback behind them. And 31 may be rich to you, Aaron. I have no idea how you feel about it. I'm sure we'll get into it. But, man, I was like, yep, this makes sense. People may hate it, but I totally buy into what Shanahan's preaching here.
I thought 31 was a little rich for a receiver, considering they had other needs that were pressing, like offensive tackle, mainly offensive tackle. But the more I hear 2 people talk about Colton McKivitz, the more I'm starting to think that and realizing that the Niners are a lot more higher on him than a lot of people are.
Yeah.
If anything, it's guard center is more their concern. And, we drafted, as we'll talk about, we drafted an offensive lineman a couple picks from now. And that's kind of where they kind of foresee him going, not a tackle. And so I thought receiver was kind of, to me, this is like a luxury pick in a way, because like we're pretty good 1 through 3 in the receiving core. But when you start thinking about if people get hurt, I mean, Chris Conley, you're really going to depend on him. Ronnie Bell, can you really depend on him? Danny Gray will even make, he's probably going to be on the roster in training camp, but some of your projected cuts I seen down the road, you had exactly the guys that I thought in my brain who, everyone's like, all these guys are in camp. Who's going to get cut down the road, or who's going to be a pre-camp cut, or this, that, or the other? All the people you had listed is exactly how I saw the depth chart myself. So we're on the same page on that one. But listen, man, I'm not mad at the pick. And the more you watch film on him and the more you hear him talk, he sounds like a Niner already. He seems like a guy is willing to get to work. He's quick. He can get open. He can get separation. He's got sticky hands. Those are all things Kyle Shanahan loves. And it's exciting because, we already have so many guys in our roster that take attention away from defenses. So
right.
I mean, this is like a perfect situation for him to come in if they end up making him the slot guy, which I don't know how they're going to do that with Juwan Jennings being the slot guy. But I'm cool with the pick more now than when it first happened. I was hoping tackle, but you can't reach for tackle if the tackle that you're reaching for at 31 isn't significantly better than the guys you already have in the building. So that's how I kind of looked at it. If that's how the Niners must have looked at it. So I'm cool with it.
Right, but then take that, the last part you just said, reaching for a tackle, if you don't view them maybe as highly as McKivitz or, that much higher than McKivitz, it's not like they didn't trade out of tackle position in the second round, letting the Ravens take Roger Rosengarten in front of them, then trading back and letting the Chiefs get Kingsley Suamataia from BYU. So San Francisco might feel, and their draft board is always different than the consensus is. I get the Mel Kipers will say it was a reach, and then Kyle Shanahan's like, yeah, watch him score 8 touchdowns for 800 yards rookie season. Now, is Pearsall going to do that? Who knows? But one common factor throughout the entire draft class, outside of the handful of picks, like Pearsall played 5 years in college. Renardo Green played 5 years in college. Dominic Puni, I think, played 6 years in college. Jared Kingston played 5 years in college. I think the only 4-year straight player that comes to mind, I think, was Malik Mustafa. And I could be wrong there, but a lot of players that have a ton of college experience that I believe can come in and be instant impact players. Now, how much of an impact is that? I have no idea. Obviously, time will tell, and Shanahan will be able to kind of figure out a scheme with those players and play chess matches with defenses with the guys he got. But, there were 2 players in the entire draft class that, not just the Niners, the entire draft as a whole, that I sat back on offense and said, these 2 guys scream Kyle Shanahan players. And they drafted both of them, Ricky Pearsall and Isaac Guerendo. And I said, yep, that makes sense. You pinpoint the guys Shanahan loves, and they all have their drawbacks. They all have the things they're good at. But I was like, yep, these 2 players are going to find their way into being a San Francisco 49er. And lo and behold, they may, quote unquote, reach at 31 for Pearsall, and they trade up for Guerendo in the 4th round. So I was sitting back like, Kyle Shanahan's a little predictable now, to be honest with you. But man, but I get it. A lot of conversation, and I actually believe this, that the Ravens may have had the first 2 rounds in which the Niners wanted, which was Nate Wiggins from Clemson, who San Francisco was infatuated with, and Roger Rosengarten in the 2nd round, who the Niners liked as well, who had private workouts with at the University of Washington after his pro day. So is there maybe the Ravens took the guys the Niners wanted? Sure. I think that definitely could be the case. But I think with what San Francisco got at the positions they got, rounds 1 through 2, rounds 1 through 3, it's really hard to be angry with them knowing they can play this year, but also in the next couple of years when guys leave, they should slide right into a role and keep the window open for this hopefully Super Bowl winning team in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think a lot of people miss the point of, elongating this window. And if all these players that we draft, especially a guy like Pearsall, works, then it just makes moving on from, say, like a guy like Deebo that much easier because, like you said, he can slide right in. I personally think that if he has a really strong season, it's no doubt then Deebo leaves next year for a couple of reasons. One, he's oft hurt. And 2, he's got a high cap number. So with those 2 reasons, you always go with the guy that's the cheapest. And if he's also happens to be productive, then it's a win-win situation. I mean, look what the Niners have been able to do roster-wise with Brock Purdy being on the low number that he has in the cap. They're able to just insulate him with insane amount of talent, and a lot of people, you will see that as a slight on him, that like, oh, he's just got tons of talent around him. He's just a facilitator. Who cares? I don't care. Right. Do you care? I just the more players that he has to use to win games, the better. I could care less if some schmuck at ESPN thinks that the Niners are just a product of their weapons. That's a product of the front office doing really fantastic and drafting well. And to me, it's not an indictment. I think it's a sign of really good management. It's a sign of really good people in the scouting department, all that stuff. And honestly, all this talk about if something's a reach or if it's a bad pick, it's a bust, we're not going to know for 3 years anyways. Usually that's kind of like the magic number. So we'll see. I don't know. I got a good feeling about Pearsall. I don't know if you feel the same way. I just have a really good feeling about him. I feel he's coming in. He doesn't have a ton of pressure on him. He's not expected.
Yeah. So with Ricky Pearsall, I think his play translates to the NFL. Or at least there should be a pretty easy translation to the NFL for Pearsall. I also think that maybe it's a conspiracy theory. I don't know if it is or not, but I think Kyle Shanahan, after he went to Cancun or Cabo, wherever he goes after the Super Bowl, obviously sick to his stomach and was just like, I am so tired of losing in February. I hate it. I've done it 3 times now in the most gut-wrenching fashion you could ever do it. Leading in overtime and having the biggest comeback of all time against you when you were Atlanta. I think he goes on vacation. He comes back and he watches the tape. And I think he sits there and he says, man, if only we had another playmaker that can get open by themselves. Somebody I don't have to manufacture touches for.
Yes.
And Deebo is great. I love Deebo Samuel. He can carry the offense. He does so many things. And he's a player the league is still trying to find the second version of. Kadarius Toney, Wendell Robinson, and there's others,
Cordell Patterson,
Laviska Shenault, who was a bust with the Jaguars. Like, everyone's trying to find their second Deebo Samuel. And I think Shanahan watched him go off the field and be injured against the Packers early, watch the offense fall apart. Now, the defense played poorly almost all 3 of the games besides the last one against Kansas City, but the offense was very stagnant through the 2 playoff games against the Packers and the Lions. And he watched Deebo not be healthy against the Lions, then get hurt again against Kansas City. And I think it made him sick to his stomach. And he was like, if I had somebody else that can get open by themselves, I don't have to scheme for, they can beat a defensive back one-on-one in man coverage and give my young quarterback who just came off an MVP season someone consistently open, whether it be Pearsall or Ayuk, or if both those guys have to get double covered because they're so good at running routes and separating, Deebo Samuel or Juwan Jennings or George Kittle. If I can just have 2 guys that can beat man coverage, it opens up so much for a young quarterback, or any quarterback that is. And if we just had that, we'd be sitting here and nobody would be criticizing, why didn't you address the offensive line? Why did you trade up for a running back and this, that, and the other? There'd be a whole different story being told of, wow, Brock Purdy climbed the mountaintop and Kyle Shanahan finally got over the hump. And I think that's what he sees in Pearsall. That's a big expectation, mind you, but I think in 1 year's time, San Francisco, whether Deebo's here or not, we are going to be talking about Ayuk, an elite separator, receiver number 1, and Ricky Pearsall being an excellent number 2. Whether you want to call him Julian Edelman like Brian Baldinger called him, or you want to say he's Tyler Lockett like I've called him, or Adam Thielen to Ayuk, Stephon Diggs, he gives you somebody else that a defensive coordinator like Steve Spagnuolo has to say, we either got to double this kid or put our best cornerback on. And once you do that, it opens up everything else for an already loaded offense that Kyle Shanahan can run.
Yeah, the Niners got squatted on in the Super Bowl. They were pressing. They had a hard time getting open in that game, and it would be nice to have, because Juwan Jennings is slow.
Yeah.
Not a great separator. Great clutch catch guy on third down, right? Deebo, I love him to death, but he's not really a receiver. And I know he gets upset when people call him that they have to, but they have to facilitate offense for him. They have to figure out ways to get him involved because he's not a great separator of the football. And it's not a knock. Well, it is a knock on him, but it's not that he's a bad player. He's an incredible player, but
just who he is.
You got to call a spade. And the more guys that they can get that like you said, they don't need to scheme open. The one thing I noticed about the Dolphins and the 49ers, and my brother is attest to this, and we watch games together, the Niners and the Dolphins have the same issues on offense. If somebody takes something away or a guy gets hurt that their offense is predicated on, like it's revolved around, it's like they have no answers to find another guy to take over that particular role. Like Deebo goes out, we're effed. The whole game plan was revolved around Deebo, and now that Deebo's out, we have no answers. And you see it. And I like the fact that we double dipped at receiver and both guys look like guys that can get open in small space. I'm interested to talk about the other guy in a sec because he's a smaller guy. I call him Tyreek Hill light. And Jason Aponte's like, I can't put that on him, Tyreek Hill. I'm just saying he's small and he's quick, and it's interesting to see what he does in a small area, his footwork and stuff, and what he could do to corners with that kind of speed. But it is what it is when you criticize Deebo. It's not that he's a bad player. It's just the Niners offense is so predicated on movement and formations and eye candy and window dressing that it'd be nice to have a guy that straight up could just get open against a cornerback and you don't, like you said, devise some sort of scheme to do it. So while I would have wanted to tackle at the pick, I'm not upset. And the more I talk about it and the more I see interviews from the kid on like 95.7 The Game with Bonta and Shasky, I'm like, I'm loving this kid even more. So definitely okay with the pick. They went defense, pick 64, round 2, Renardo Green. Looks like a sticky kind of man-to-man guy, a little smallish, weight-wise. I would assume he's got to get in the weight room a little bit. Sticky coverage guy that, and something that the Niners, Javarius Ward, I think, is a pretty good man-to-man corner. And in this pick, I don't know. I mean, in a perfect world, you want to have Renardo Green become your other, corner on the opposite side so that DMO can go into the slot. What was your overall opinion on the pick?
Yeah, I thought this was a spot where I would figure San Francisco would have gone offensive line, knowing that there was a run on offensive linemen right in front of them. Again, Roger Rosengarten goes 62 to the Ravens, a player San Francisco liked. They trade back with Kansas City, allowing them to take Kingsley Suamataia. And then Christian Haynes from UConn, who was still on the board at the time, he goes to Seattle after later on in the third round. And I was like, wow, like I'm really shocked in what San Francisco did. I would have taken Christian Haynes at the spot and instantly plugged him at right guard and told Feliciano, you're going to be our center and guard backup now because someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to go down. But just Renardo Green as a whole, it's unfair to grade a player on who is in front of them or who is behind them because that's not their fault. But I was watching ESPN when this trade occurred, or when the pick occurred, excuse me, and Louis Riddick said that Renardo Green is the best press man cornerback in the entire draft. Now, is Louis Riddick correct? Time will tell. But Green gives you nickel, outside cornerback, and free safety flexibility. 5-year college player, just like Pearsall was in the first round. He's a little smaller. He's 6 foot, 186. So you wish he was around 6'1" and 6'2" to make you more comfortable with him playing outside. But he played 75% of his snaps in press man coverage at Florida State. Very fluid hips, quick feet. He's someone who doesn't waste his steps, and he is very physical. Now, sometimes, just like Charvarius Ward, Mooney Ward can be a little over physical, whereas Renardo Green was called for 11 penalties last year, the last 2 seasons, including 4 pass interference calls. So very Mooney Ward-like in play style.
Little grabby.
There are some times, but here's the thing, and I'm sure amongst the cornerbacks, and there's always these small traits that, whether it's an offensive player, a receiver, a running back, a linebacker, an edge rusher, and mainly a cornerback, you point to and say they have to do this X, Y, and Z better than others. You can be a great coverage player. And I was someone that really liked Andrew Phillips from Kentucky as a nickelback potential prospect. But then you dive into him in his tape, amazing in coverage. He can't tackle and plays lighter than what his actual play weight is. Meanwhile, Renardo Green is just a dog when it comes to run defending. He's a good tackler, and he's really good in coverage. I'm sure you've heard by now, Aaron, and I'm sure the viewers have heard as well, an 86.4 coverage grade amongst ACC cornerbacks that ranked 3rd. He only gave up 14 first downs last year at Florida State and tied for the most forced incompletions in man coverage. And you go and dive into his tape against players like Malik Neighbors, like Brian Thomas from LSU, who went in the first round. And then you add in Ricky Pearsall, his new teammate, 60 coverage snaps, just 5 catches allowed, 1 interception, and a 28.7 quarterback rating. While you wish there was a little more turning, some PBUs into INTs, and he wasn't so grabby, and you wish it was a little bigger, there's a ton of potential here for him to not just start on the outside in year 1 if players like Isaac Gatum don't stick or Avery Thomas somehow finds his way back in that lineup. I just think Renardo Green raises the floor, but also gives you day one starting potential. And if you want to look towards the future again, like we do with Pearsall, Travarius Ward's contract's up after this year. They've gotten a mirror image of him, albeit a little tinier in regards to height. So I like the pick. I know it, again, the point was like, who is this kid? We're reaching somewhat, but at the end of the day, he just fits what the Niners like to do. And he was really good at what the Niners like to do. So it just makes sense. You're putting two of the best ingredients together, press man, coverage corner, and the San Francisco 49ers defense.
One thing Jason Aponte said yesterday when he was on, he said that the Niners are kind of almost with this kind of pick is looking to get, guy, with the scheme last year was just all over the place with the zone coverage and the blitz and the pass rush not syncing up. And, the Niners maybe want to go a little bit more man. The one thing is great coverage makes the secondary, or the great coverage makes the pass rush, when it's not doing so great, look a lot better.
Yep.
And a pick like this is almost the perfect guy that you can go for. And if they do have the mindset of not being so heavy a zone team as they've been in the past and go more man to man, then he looks like a guy that could fit right in. My whole thing with him is just he did it against the competition that he went against at college, guys that are being drafted into the NFL. So that gives me hope that, he's not like some, Division II school corner that has never faced elite competition. So I'm excited. And you're right. It's always looking to the future with this team. You have to look at these picks and think like, okay, not only are they drafting somebody, but they're drafting a potential replacement, because that's how you keep the roster, when the turnover happens, you keep it to where you can consistently keep winning. And that's drafting good and replacing guys that were there that made a lot more money with younger guys that aren't quite making that money yet. You can kind of elongate that window. So I'm big on Renardo Green. Like, I would love to see him get a little more heavy.
Yeah.
A little slender. It looks like he can get bodied by bigger receivers, which is something that I hate. I hate seeing big, strong receivers body skinny corners. So hopefully either this year or next year he gets his ass into the weight room. But I'm okay with the pick. Again, like, kept thinking offensive tackle. Once again, see, the Niners, you can't predict their drafts. You cannot predict. I don't know how to predict anything anymore with this team, especially the way they draft.
There are players you can point to and go, they'll like them, but you never know when they're going to take them. A guy you think might go in round 5 is going to go in round 2 for them.
Everybody's big board is different. This is the first year without Adam Peters. So
yeah,
we'll see. This is, like I said, about 2-3 years. It's a good way to assess a pick. So we'll see if this new regime behind the scenes drafting and scouting players is better, the same, or worse. Time will tell. Next guy off the board was round 3, pick 86, offensive guard / tackle, maybe center, Dominic Puni.
Yeah, it's Puni.
That's weird last name.
Yeah,
thoughts on Puni?
So they traded up with Philadelphia to get Dominic Puni. So obviously they like him a lot. He's 6'5", 313 pounds, 6 years in college. Former D2 player, transferred to Kansas. I don't think he'll be a tackle. I think the arm length is much more of a concern. And the anchor he has isn't great in his lower half. So there may be concerns there playing against someone like a Myles Garrett if he has to one day, or Chris Jones, albeit Chris Jones lines up inside primarily. But he's played 25 straight games at Kansas, had nearly 1,600 snaps, and didn't allow a single sack. He is someone at Kansas who was relied heavily. 47% of their runs were behind Dominic Puni, which was more than any other interior offensive lineman in this class. And behind Puni this year, Kansas averaged 3.5 yards before contact. If that does not scream Kyle Shanahan just ground and pound the ball, but with Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, maybe even Jordan Mason, Isaac Grendo this year, that is just, that's a Kyle Shanahan guy, and it makes sense.
They all come together, all these picks.
Honestly, like, you start to get the puzzle, and you sort like when you see the pieces come together, the picture becomes a lot more clearer for the Niners draft class. He's someone that, and we can dive into this once we get to Jarek Kingston later in round. I think it was 7, or maybe it was 6.
6.
It's round 6.
Yep.
Pooney had a 4.4 shuttle time and a 7.473 cone. Aaron, you look at this draft class, every one of the Niners offensive linemen, whether it be Pooney, whether it be Kingston, or the 2 undrafted guys, Mays and Nugent, had elite level shuttle times and 3 cones. So those are 2 attributes Shanahan looks for: getting off the ball quick and moving in short yardage quickly, being able to pull. He's really common pass protection, only allowed 4 pressures the past 2 seasons, and didn't allow a single sack in 324 pass blocking snaps. The arm length, again, is a concern. I think he's a guard more than a center or a tackle. You wish his lower half was stronger, which get into the NFL, get their strength and conditioning. That should improve over time. But I think day one, he walks in as your 6th offensive lineman. And if someone goes down or he can progress his anchor as a pass protector, you walk into the year with Dominick Pooney being either your 6th man or maybe your starting right guard. And again, looking towards the future, Aaron Banks on his last year of his deal, and John Feliciano called it the last dance for him. So this is going to be a starting player at least in 1 year's time.
I got shot down by multiple people when I said, could this be an Aaron Banks replacement if the 49ers decide they don't want to pay him? And a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to pay Banks. There's no question about him. I'm like, yeah, but what if they don't? They got a lot of other players to pay.
Right.
Like, when I saw this pick and they said that he was tackling college, but projects to guard, the first thing I thought was Aaron Banks replacement. Spends part of the year, or at least they have him kind of penciled in to maybe he takes over for Spencer Burford or Feliciano over at right guard, and then eventually moves over to left guard. Do you have kind of that as something that could possibly happen, or is it more he could be the eventual replacement over at right guard after Feliciano takes off this year?
I think the hope would be late in the year that Dominick Pooney becomes a starting right guard. You look at how San Francisco handled Aaron Banks his rookie season, where they really wanted him to play right guard to give them flexibility with Daniel Brunskill, and he just couldn't get the footwork down. His body wasn't right for it. He just couldn't get it down. I don't think that's going to be a problem with Dominick Pooney. That said, I know one of your commenters, Jordan Anderson, said investing in the offensive line is the better way to invest in Brock Purdy, and I get that. Totally understand. What San Francisco did today, or did on the draft night, day 2, was on day 1 of the draft, took the 2nd highest drafted receiver under Kyle Shanahan. Ayuk's number 1, Pearsall's number 2. On day number 2, took the highest drafted cornerback under Kyle Shanahan. And on day number 3, took the 3rd highest drafted offensive lineman under Kyle Shanahan. He is telling us these guys are supposed to be starters for us of the future and hopefully impact now. So anyone saying that Pearsall, Green, and Dominick Pooney aren't going to have an impact, or the planning isn't at least for them to start and take over either Feliciano's job or Aaron Banks' job, is just simply wrong. And I get it. Banks could be back, and Dominick Pooney is your right guard next year. But the Niners are telling us if these guys hit, which the plan is always for guys to hit, they're going to be starting players in at least 1 year.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I forgot if they saw. He also is a guy when he listened to him talk, just, man, the Niners, it's like not only do they find really good football players for the most part, but character is so huge for this regime. All these guys, like, I'm an old guy now, and I'm like kind of crusty, and I don't like players with attitudes or arrogance and stuff. So I'm always like, the old head in me is always like, there you go, This generation is a respectful
young man.
Yeah, like, this generation isn't as cursed as I thought it was. These guys seem like they're really well put together. They're 4, 5, 6 year college students, staying at their So it tells me a lot about character. Man, you're right though. Man, after the Trey Lance debacle of,
Yikes.
I mean, now that's like now they're going to completely the opposite direction. It's two extremes. It's like no time in college versus like way too much time in college. Like there's no middle ground with these guys. It's like if you don't have at least 4 years in college, we're just not even going to draft you. And it seems like that with most of the picks they made this year. So yeah, I thought when the draft pick happened that it was a potential replacement for Aaron Banks. Like I said, I got shot down by people. They don't believe it. They think the Niners are going to pay Banks, but I look at the money that they're going to have to give to Brock Purdy, and money's got to come from somewhere. And I think, like you say, the Niners have a plan. There's a plan that's always coming together, and the more time goes by, you see the cohesion of that plan. It's like every piece, every draft pick has a connection to another draft pick 2 rounds later, and it has a connection with the team 2 years from now. Like it's always a constant moving thing, and I think the older I've gotten, like the more I appreciate that. It's really like chess, checkers, whatever you want to say. So, yeah, big on Pooney. Big on the next guy too. I love his last name, Malik Mustafa, round 4, pick 124, safety. A lot of questions with T. Gip. I don't know if he's said he's retired. Jair Brown, he's kind of the only guy back there that you could say is a viable starter. And then, of course, we got the Talanoa Hufanga situation with him coming off his injury. Feeling on the Malik Mustafa pick in round 4.
Well, it's funny you brought up Trey Lance talking about Dominic Pooney and how this team is going in a much more experienced college player route. This is the pick in which San Francisco got for Trey Lance. And when the pick was coming in, I, again, figured was like, do they go tackle? There's plenty on the board. Like, what is San Francisco going to do here? And then I have 200 prospects in my phone during the whole process, looking at who they're going to take, all these things, and was like, okay, this guy makes sense here and this goes here. But when Malik Mustafa's name came across the draft board, I just said, yeah, like he was many people's best safety on the board still. Some best safety in the entire class. There can be an argument made for Jaden Hicks from Washington State, who went to Kansas City. But I can guarantee you, Green Bay Packers fans, and I know this to be true, they are wanting to strangle Brian Gutekunst, their GM, for trading up for arguably the worst safety in the draft and letting Malik Mustafa fall to the San Francisco 49ers. His 40 time is deceiving, ran a 4.5, which isn't too bad, but he ran 23 miles an hour on the radar gun. So this kid, this, I guess, young man, and the Niners' new safety knows how to fly around. He plays fast, big-bodied, thumping, strong safety. But unlike maybe Talanoa Hufanga, unlike Jair Brown, who I don't think is bad in coverage, but is obviously a slower player, playmaking, ball-hawking safety, Malik Mustafa has really good coverage skills. Held opposing quarterbacks to a 32% completion rate. That was 6th in the entire FBS, not just including safeties. Allowed 1 touchdown in 304 coverage snaps, good anticipation, high IQ. He can play deep. He can play in the box. And the one thing you like with this draft class, going back to Ricky Pearsall for a second, through his 5 years in college, he improved every single year. Malik Mustafa is in the same conversation or same box. Last year, really improved his tackling. Great run defender again. A career best 87.5 run defense grade this past season. That was 5th among Power 5 safeties. 21 run stops. That ranked 15th amongst all safeties in college football. 96th percentile run defense. 95th percentile run stop rate. He'll take on bigger tight ends. He'll take on the offensive linemen. There is an injury concern with him. He tore his ACL in 2021, and he missed 3 games because of it in 2022, but that's seemingly behind him. And he is a player that, just like Pearsall, probably even more so than Pearsall or Green or Pooney, If Hufanga isn't healthy, come on down, Malik Mustafa, and be our starting strong safety. Um, I know people love pro comps. Pearsall gets the Tyler Lockett. He gets the Adam Thielen. He'll get every white slot cornerback pro comp to him there ever has been. But Malik Mustafa, the pro comp that I've had and even others have had for him, is a player San Francisco has coveted for a while. And he went back to New England this year, but that is Kyle Duggar, a player that comes down in the box. He can thump. He can also cover extremely well. So this was my favorite pick of the entire draft class, and I think this was their best value pick. I released my draft grades on Instagram about a couple of days ago, and this was an A+ for me. I love this pick.
And he's got a really cool name too.
Yeah, he does.
If you go with the fact that the nickname given to Jair Brown was Tig, and then you go with Malik Mustafa having Mustafa,
yeah,
which reminds you of what's his name from the Mufasa from the Lion King. It's just meant to be, people. It's just meant to be. Don't question it. Just accept it. Yeah.
They got a lion and a tiger in the secondary.
Right. That's pretty awesome. They need to do something. I already told yesterday during the stream, I was like, Niners, I'm giving you an idea for something that you can make money off of, okay? I expect a small kickback, but like go with it. You know, think of something, maybe let some animated cats with some 49er merchandise on it. I don't know, but I thought, a lot of people who covered the draft and do what you do say that Malik Mustafa could be someone who could step in and start, and that he does have better speed than maybe both Jair Brown and Talanoa Hufanga, because Talanoa Hufanga and Jair Brown to me are both box safeties. You know, they're better closer they get to the line of scrimmage. Farther they get back, the more they're vulnerable and more they can be kind of exposed a little bit. So the Niners look like they're still, from what the reports were, and I don't really buy into it, but Jamal Adams maybe interested. No. I'm like, please, he's so bad.
If he wants to play linebacker, that's fine, but he's not playing safety.
If he wants to take over for Dre Greenlaw, while we figure out what's going on with that, then yeah, be my guest. But you're not touching the secondary. I think the Niners get connected to every safety out there because they have so many question marks with I'm surprised that Tyshawn Gibson hasn't officially announced his retirement yet. I don't. Just a matter of time.
I was thinking about that during the draft, and part of the safety, would San Francisco draft a safety? A lot of the debate in my own head was, you have two safeties, Jair Brown and Hufanga, that are both hyper aggressive. You want them making plays on the football. They're ball hawks. They can get you the ball back. And Jair Brown came on late in the season and showed that in the Super Bowl to get you an interception against Mahomes, which they didn't score off of, mind you. But they have two of those guys already. And the debate in my head was, would it pay to get a conservative safety to play at free safety? If Hufanga's going to be hurt or injured this year, move Jair Brown over, have him play the strong safety role. And I was interested in what they would do. Would they go the Malik Mustafa route? Would they go the Jaden Hicks route? Or would they go the Dominique Hampton route? Super conservative, 5-6 year college player out of Washington who's going to take good routes to the ball, good routes to ball carriers, won't make a lot of plays, but he'll save you some touchdowns. San Francisco said, no, we have a type, and it doesn't matter whether they play free safety or strong safety. I think the way they view the safety role is very interchangeable. I don't think they have the word free or strong next to the word safety on the depth chart. It's just, we got two guys back there that we like that can make plays, and they can both play in the box. They're good run defenders. But Malik Mustafa, inserting him into that room is, now you have a player that can make plays for sure. Good run defender, definitely, but can also cover extremely well, which makes them even more dangerous against quarterbacks like Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Mahomes, who they have to play in the regular season this year. So it'll be interesting what transpires as the safety room kind of rounds into form after training camp and preseason.
Do you think they make a move on any free agent safeties? They've been connected with a lot of people. They ended up, I know that I forgot who the guy was that they were connected to, and then he ended up signing.
Julian Blackmon went back to the Colts.
Yep. That was the big fish that a lot of people were saying, oh, we'll get him eventually. And it's like, no, he's going to sign.
Yeah, that was one, again, part of that conversation of, do you go, draft the high safety, you get a playmaker like Mustafa, Jaden Hicks, do you go out and get a Dominique Hampton, or do you just wait this thing out and hope you can kind of bank on Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs out there in free agency? I think if anything is likely, I don't think it is a Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs. I think the most likeliest option, if in regards to signing a safety, if they do, which they need one, like Hufanga's off the ACL. He tore it in, I think, November, so relatively late in the NFL season.
Yeah.
Then Taylor Hawkins, who is a backup, tore his ACL the last game of the year, so they don't have two safeties that you'd like to at least be either a starter or in a depth role. I think Gibson might find his way back on the team to say, one more year. Now, how far did they go? I have no idea, but he finally got that taste of a Super Bowl, and he had it in his hands, and it fell through. So it wouldn't be surprised if he tells his wife and kids, just give me one more chance. I was almost there. Let daddy finish the job, and then I'll come home.
Yeah, that Super Bowl loss is still with me, man. I quit YouTube for a whole couple months, and I'm still not as locked in or committed as I was last year, because it took a lot out of me, that loss. It took me like, okay, I got to prioritize, because this is like bad for my mental health. So,
right.
But eventually, when the season gets closer, I'll be doing a lot more regular stuff. But yeah, I mean, when you're that close, I can't imagine a player, if he's like, he could taste it, he's just like, one more time. Like, it's like an addiction.
Exactly.
Especially because the Niners are really good. They have a lot of good talent on this team. They're still, I'd say, top 3 best roster in the league.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Niners go running back in the draft. Of course they're going to go running back in the draft. That's the 49ers. Isaac Guerendo.
Man.
Round 4, pick 129. Tall, big, and really he's got that. A lot of people are saying he's got that quick twitch, that ability to kind of make a big play with his speed. What's your thoughts on Isaac Guerendo?
So this was the other player in the draft class that I was like, yep, Kyle Shanahan guy through and through. This makes sense. Screams Kyle Shanahan as a running back. And you can go back to my Twitter, February, I think 24th. I put a tweet out saying, let me introduce you to Isaac Guerendo, Niner fans. He's going to be on this roster some way, somehow. And now, did I know that? I don't have a crystal ball, but I was sure happy to see Isaac Guerendo be picked, and not just picked, traded up for, mind you. So Kyle Shanahan obviously likes him a lot, and he wasn't a 3rd-round running back; he was a 4th-round running back, so he's guaranteed to hit this year as factual. But I think it was a good spot for him. I think of the running backs in the draft class, which there weren't many that stood out. There were a lot, but many of them were just kind of 3rd running backs on the depth chart, depth pieces, UDFAs. Guerendo, to me, was my number 1 outside zone runner in the draft, which, again, just screams Kyle Shanahan. He'll fight through contact. He'll lower his pads. Pretty good vision. I think one of the underrated parts of his game, and I think what led Kyle Shanahan to him outside of the rushing or the running ability, was good pass catcher and the ability to pass block. If you want to get on the field, a.k.a. Trey Sermon, you got to pass block, a.k.a. Ty Davis Price. You have to learn how to block. Guerendo shouldn't have those issues that the previous 2 running backs Kyle Shanahan drafted early had throughout their few years with the Niners. That said, 4.3 speed. He's 6 foot, 221 pounds. 22 explosive runs in just 132 carries. If you can do some quick math, that is 6% of his carries were explosive. I know he kind of jumped up the draft boards due to his scouting combine. And I get he tested so well. I also am someone that says, hey, you can test well, but what is your play speed like? Xavier Worthy tests extremely well, who went to Kansas City, who many fans wanted in the first round. You watch his play speed, sure, it's there, but it ain't 4.21 when you got, spandex and no one's guarding you. You play differently. Guerendo, well, I don't think the drop off is that drastic. He does take a little bit to get going, but again, he has 4.3 speed and he will pull away from the pack once he gets going. The one big concern with Guerendo, which will make every Niner fan squeal and scream and say, are you freaking serious, is he does have injury history. He's never been the guy at Louisville. I think he was at Wisconsin prior to Louisville. He's got little tread on his tires, but because he's been hurt so much. And so I'm sure Kyle Shanahan said, if I can just get this guy in the room, get his body right, he doesn't have to be my RB1. He's my RB2, my RB3, my change of pace kind of guy, can give me a pass block here or there, be my Jeff Wilson Jr. in 2019. That's fine. Play limited snaps, but give me something that Mitchell and Mason can't at the moment. And when you have 4.3 speed, you're going to get something else that Mitchell and Mason don't currently have. And so I love Guerendo. I hope it works out. I think it will work out. The pro comp for him is and has been Raheem Mostert. He just screams a guy that injuries early in his career, never really got to be the guy as a UDFA coming out of the NFL, now Guerendo in college at Wisconsin and Louisville. But give him time, and Kyle Shanahan goes, I can make you something and get you paid one day. I'm hoping that is Isaac Guerendo out of Louisville in round 4.
Do you see him as possibly being a replacement for Elijah Mitchell, or because of what you just mentioned, does that more or less make him more of just a rotational running back?
I think in year 1, he can have impact. Shanahan's really fickle about his running backs. Obviously, yes, CMC Offensive Player of the Year, could have been the MVP if you want to go deep into the conversation. But even last year, when we were all screaming, where is Jordan Mason? We saw the Cleveland game, Kyle. He can give you something as a power back. Kyle Shanahan said when he's healthy, Elijah Mitchell is this team's second best running back. Now, that said, Mitchell's contract is up after this season. I was actually pretty surprised they didn't try to trade him during the draft, simply because now they have 5, if you want to count Cody Schrader, 6 running backs in that room. And because the running back class was so, I guess you can say mid, as the youngins might say, I think a team would value, like the Dallas Cowboys getting Elijah Mitchell. They got Zeke Elliott today. They could have valued Elijah Mitchell in round 5 or 6 during the draft. Maybe you could have gotten extra offensive lineman or another cornerback or even a linebacker. Who knows? I was surprised he wasn't on the move. Now, I don't think Guerendo would usurp Mitchell this year simply because Kyle likes Mitchell a lot and Mitchell runs with the physicality Kyle does like. I think it might take a year for Guerendo to get his body right for the NFL. But if Mitchell goes down, which will probably happen, or even if Christian McCaffrey goes down, fingers crossed it doesn't, Guerendo could be your RB2 behind Mitchell and give you some snaps late in the season, or if CMC goes down early, can give you some snaps early and could, I think, impact a game here or two. But I would not bank on him taking Mitchell's spot, but I do think there's a chance if Mitchell goes down that Guerendo comes in, plays well, then guess what, Elijah? Sorry, you're RB3 now.
Yeah, he just needs to stay healthy himself too, not just Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah.
Guerendo has to find a way to keep himself on the field because you're not of any use or of any value if you're injured. So, yep. Tough league. It's a tough business, but that's just how it works. Next pick 135 in round 4, wide receiver Jacob Cowing. Wasn't overly impressed when I first saw the pick, but then again, as I got to listen to people that actually know what they're talking about and who scout and who watch and who break down, a lot more excited about the Jacob Cowing pick. So take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think I'm in the same boat as you, not in regards to not liking him or just kind of being uncertain of what this pick was going to be, but I went Another receiver? Really? Okay. Like, where does Cowing fit in the room that has a lot of either 6th-round picks or Conley, who you like, can be a special teamer? You just signed Trent Taylor. Danny Gray's still there, former 3rd-round pick. Like, where does Cowing fit in that room that already has a lot of bodies, and you already added Pearsall to it, so you're already 4 people deep? Are you going to carry 5? You're going to carry 6 guys? I know last year, I think San Francisco carried 5, but a common occurrence was elevating either Willie Snead or Conley to be your 6th man off the bench. So when I saw it, I said, you drafted him too early to cut him and have him be a practice squad player. He's a little undersized. He's 5'8", kind of a gadget player if you want to go that far, but he has 4.38 speed, 170 pounds. Again, he lacks size. He lacks physicality. He is someone that, because of his short stature, he will get bumped off the line of scrimmage and will get bumped off by physical cornerbacks. The beautiful thing, and going back, I think your brother's a Dolphins fan, of the receivers in the draft class, I was like, you know what receiver just screams Miami Dolphins? Jacob Cowing. And the reason why I say that is because he is someone that he will work extremely well when you can create free releases and put him in motion. Kyle Shanahan also does the exact same thing. And I think Cowing, I don't know if it's year 1 or year 2, but just strictly talking about a receiver role for him, getting him on end arounds, on screens, creating these free releases to allow him to use his 4.38 speed on a cornerback, maybe on a linebacker. And if you do, yikes for that defensive player. I think it does give Kyle Shanahan more creativity. Like, in a way, and they're not very similar, but Deebo Samuel is kind of this way where you want to create and manufacture touches for him. But by doing, or how you do that is you put him in motion, get him open behind the line of scrimmage, or get him on a linebacker or safety and just say, go. And I think that's how they're going to use Cowing. Again, he's small. He's 5'8", but he's super tough to tackle. And he's played 5 years in college, played 57 straight games, so his stature wasn't an issue staying healthy. But I think if you want to dive into like what a role is for him year 1, year 2, how can a young player, whether you're undrafted, 6th round, 1st round, everyone talks about, if you're a young player, you have to find your niche. You have to find that one role that gets you in the door. I think for Jacob Cowing, and maybe this goes for Grendo, but I think it goes for Cowing more, that Cowing is a player that just screams kick returner. With the new rules in place, he has that running back build. He's 5'8", around what 180 or 170, whatever he is, 170 exactly. And he's super hard to bring down with 4.38 speed. That just screams you're going to give him a free release essentially on kick returns and let him loose on special teams. They don't have a defined return man. Trent Taylor's there. McLeod's gone. Why can't Cowing be that guy? McLeod could never pull away from the pack. He was a good player. He's a fine special teamer, but he could never pull away from the pack on returns. Cowing can pull away from the pack and actually create some electricity on special teams for you if they go that route with him.
Leon Sandcastle says Cowing has the best acceleration in the draft, hits over 13 miles an hour in first 5 yards. Kyle wants to use him for the cheap play Miami uses with Hill, where he gets a running start.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And then he says Kyle had to try to run it with Deebo, but it didn't work. He just didn't have good enough acceleration.
Yeah.
Hey, man, whatever. Listen, and the NFL nothing's, unless it's illegal and it's a penalty, I don't care. If it means getting a free release and a guy gets, 5-10 yards of separation before he catches the ball, then I'm okay with that. That's something I think the Niners have had a lack of, or at least recently in these last couple of years, is just some speed in the secondary and in the running back room. And with Grendo and with Cowing, I think they get that. So be interesting to see if they know how to use that speed. Because like I said with Deebo, he's great He's all those great things you could say, but it's really hard for him to get open when it's a one-on-one situation and has to play wide receivers, so to speak.
Well, you mentioned right,
Go ahead.
and you mentioned speed, adding speed to the offense. Pearsall runs a 4.4. Bernardo Green, I believe, ran a 4.3. Malik Mustafa ran 23 miles an hour on the gun. Grendo 4.3. Cowling 4.3. Like, I don't know if it was intentional, but San Francisco added a lot of speed on both sides of the ball.
Talking with Jason Aponte yesterday, and I seen it with something he posted, or he was on another stream where he was talking. It's almost like a little bit of a philosophy change that they're going with here, possibly. Not saying that that's what it is and that's why they drafted these guys, but I mean, hey, you copy teams that are successful. I mean, Miami, you say what you want about them as a team, offensively, one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL. And why is that? That's because they have a ton of speed, and speed kills. There's nothing you can do schematically that can stop somebody who runs a 4.3 or a 4.2 40, who gets past press coverage and is wide open. It's just, if you have it, you use it. And the Niners look like they made an effort to go and draft some guys. Whether that it works out, and then whether it's favorable for them to make that kind of move, it'll be a wait and see approach.
Yeah, it'll be. You have to mix speed and physicality, and I think that's the issue with the Dolphins. They don't have a lot of physicality; it's a lot of finesse, and they're trying to get physical. But the Niners, I think, can match and kind of mix and match. We have Debo, we have our Kittle, we have guys that can run through you. Now here's guys that can run past you as well, and I think it just opens up so much. Whether it be counting on the offensive side of things, Grendo in the backfield, like if you get guys that can be successful at all three layers, or if it's counting on a free release, it opens up Debo underneath. You have Pearsall and Ayuk on deep crossers, and you're like, oh my God, we have to cover all three levels of the defense. Like, we're gonna get screwed here. Whether you're Spagnuolo or you're somebody else, McVay or whoever else is calling plays in Los Angeles now. But like, it just makes you more dangerous. The more areas of the field you make the defense have to cover, the better off you are as an offense. I think Kyle Shanahan was like, look, I'm already a great coordinator. I'm already a great offensive mind. Now you literally have every weapon in the book. Literally everyone to work with.
You have every type of player.
Done. Exactly.
Yeah, you have every type of player that you could possibly have. You have your physicality. You have your, route runners and Ayuk. Now, it looks like, at least with three positions, you got some burners too. So he's got every variety you could possibly ask for. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how all these pieces work together and getting the best out of them. Sometimes when you have a lot of weapons, it's overthinking.
Yeah.
And I think that happens sometimes with these offensive mind coaches, even Shanahan, where like they have so much that they do so little, whereas they just have to, like I always get frustrated when they're like, Debo is out of the game, and now all of a sudden the Niners game plan is completely wrecked, right?
Yeah.
With some of these guys, possibly if they can make a starting role this year, it kind of changes that a little bit, because now it's not necessarily, okay, no, Debo's out of the game. Now we're just going to sit on everything else and force them to beat us. We got some burners now, so it's just a matter of those guys can get themselves, roles and get themselves onto the field. We have a couple. I don't know how much longer you have. We have 2 more picks, and then we have some UDFAs. I don't know. All right. Round 6, offensive lineman Jarrett Kingston, pick 215. Sorry.
No, you're good. I did not like this pick at all, but that's just me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's more so who was on the board at the time, and it comes down to preference. Like, I'm not meaning to step on your toes, but like, you watched USC this year. I don't know if you did, Aaron. Caleb Williams had no pass protection, and Kingston was a problem, and he was among the issues of a Lincoln Riley-led offense where Caleb Williams has to play hero ball 90% of the time. And I think if he had some more pass protection, I think despite going number 1 overall, I think his naysayers might have a little more confidence he might hit as a quarterback in Chicago. But it's the 6th round. at 215. It's not like it's a first, second, third round pick. That said, with who was on the board at the time, and that's kind of how you value these picks. I don't look at it in the first round that much, obviously, unless you're taking Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. That's like a what are you doing kind of thing. That's an obvious blunder. I just think with Michael Jurgens from Wake Forest on the board at that point, and Bo Limmer from Arkansas, who went to the Rams later in the draft, which Jesus. Nathan Thomas, I think, went to Dallas later in the draft as a tackle. And there was a need that they did not fill on the offensive side of the football, and that was tight end number 2. Now,
yeah,
are you going to find your tight end 2 on the board in the 6th round? I don't know. They found Kittle in the 5th. I'm not saying guys like Dallin Holker from Colorado State is George Kittle, because he's obviously not. But there's a guy from South Dakota named Zach Hines or Heens, who's a great blogger, a good pass catcher, and he was a UDFA. And I was like, what are we doing taking a 8th lucky to make the team practice squad offensive lineman and instead of a tight end? And then I sat back and I said, well, this is Kyle Shanahan. This is who he is. This is exactly what he does, where he said, you know what? Is this kid great? Probably not. He can play right guard. I don't think he's a tackle, although he played 270 snaps at right tackle for USC this past year. He was Dane Brugler's of the Athletics, 28th ranked guard. And then you get to the real reason as to why Kyle Shanahan said, you know what? I don't think it's an overdraft, and this is exactly the offensive lineman that I want. Hit a 9.94 RAS score. That is the 3rd highest among interior offensive linemen. 99th percentile bench press, 93rd percentile shuttle time. 5 of the 6 offensive line prospects to hit a 4.47 shuttle time at the combine were drafted this past year. The Niners took 2 of the 5. Dominic Pooney and Jared Kingston. Is this a great pick? I don't love it. Was there bigger needs on the board? I think so. Could you get higher quality, maybe instant impact players, or fill a potential tight end 2 rollover, a Cam Latu, or Braden Willis and Eric Saubert? I think so. But when you know Kyle Shanahan, you just sit back and say, he's going to do what Kyle Shanahan does and take these hyper-athletic just prospects. You're just like, man, like, my goodness. Like, do I love this? No. But it's Kyle Shanahan, and he loves his athletic offensive linemen who may never play.
49er Media says they clearly didn't want Roger Rosengarten enough, because otherwise you would have traded up. You know the Ravens need a tackle. There's no plan B when it comes to offensive tackle. Yeah.
Yeah, that is
it's my biggest takeaway from this draft, where I'm really disappointed. Even more than the tight end thing is just Trent Williams may have 1 year left.
Yeah, maybe.
And you're going to really take it to the end? Like, okay, we essentially what they're forcing themselves to do, they're either going to go pay money on the free agent market after he retires to get themselves another offensive tackle, or they're going to have to get some combination of picks and trade up into the top 10 next year to get you. I mean, you can't sit at 31 and get the tackle of the future. Are you kidding me? And I don't scout the draft like you do, and I don't have prospects in my phone, but 31 and you're waiting for the tackle that's going to take over for Trent Williams. They're essentially, what they're saying is, we're going to either blow our load on pay a bunch of money next year to an offensive tackle in free agency, or we're going to have to give away some future picks and go up into the top 10. I don't see it any other way. Do you?
I don't know about the whole Trent Williams thing. I didn't come into this draft saying you had to find the Trent Williams replacement now, albeit I totally understand that conversation. Amarius Mims from Georgia, who went to the Bengals, I believe, just screams elite prospect in 1 or 2 years, which you had to trade up to get him. I don't know if you wanted to do that, but I do think this draft class, in regards to offensive linemen, mainly tackle, one of the sticking points that I think people are missing is that a lot of tackles or people that were called tackles in this draft, and I'm not saying Niner Media is wrong or I disagree. I just think that they're guards in the NFL. And I think you may see them as a tackle on a sheet of paper. You may see them as a tackle on a mock draft simulator. We all did. They're guards. Kingsley Suamataia is a guard. Roger Rosengarten has play strength concerns and anchor concerns of he's going to get bullied in year one. Now, that isn't to say those guys can't be quality players down the road. They certainly could be. I just think that Jordan Morgan fit the Niners to a T. He went to Green Bay. And I'm sure there were a handful of guys they liked. Patrick Paul went to the Miami Dolphins. Excellent pass protector. Can't run block to save his life. And so Shanahan being very picky, we already talked about it. You have to have a great shuttle time and a great 3-cone. And if you don't, you're not getting picked by this team. And if you do, it's an outlier. So, and even then, that goes into the UDFAs they picked up. Bryson Mays and Drake Nugent. Those guys, same thing. Like even the offensive linemen they signed post-draft fit the same mold of guys they would have drafted if you just change the names around. So I think that's the misconception many people have of, well, they didn't get a tackle. A lot of tackles on paper are actually guards in the NFL. And if they're not going to, if they don't love the player, he doesn't fit Kyle Shanahan's athletic mold with a great 3-cone and a great shuttle time, you're not going to be an offensive lineman here. I just think that they, like, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan tried to blow smoke up our butts in the post-draft press conference.
They always do.
And I don't remember who it was. One of them said, well, we like Jalen Moore a lot. And it was like, no, you don't. There's no way. There's no way you've not said that for 3 seasons. Now all of a sudden you like Jalen
nothing
Moore.
You've done coaching-wise or anything else, playtime, anything, has screamed, we love Jalen Moore.
Right. And I get it. I don't think that Colton McKivitz was the issue. Now, is he great?
No.
I ain't saying that. Right guard did not cost you, or excuse me, right tackle did not cost you 2 Super Bowls. Right guard did. And if you can't block Chris Jones, you cannot go against the Lions who added DJ Reader this year to an already ferocious defensive line. You go against teams like Green Bay and others, teams like Seattle who added Byron Murphy, and Leonard Williams is still there, although he wasn't great last season for them. You go against teams like Washington who aren't good, but they have like 6 defensive tackles. If you can't guard the interior, this is the thing. The fastest way to a quarterback is via the interior of the offensive line. You get through the center, get through the guards. That's San Francisco's problem. The way Kansas City dials up pressure is getting on the interior. It's not from the edge. The edge didn't cost you 2 Super Bowls. It was guard because you couldn't block Chris Jones. What did San Francisco do this year? They added 2 guards. Kingston may suck. If Pooney is who we think he might be and be a starter this year or next year, whatever it is, if he can make the right guard more consistent and show up in big moments, you probably win a Super Bowl in the next few years. And if Mike Person or Spencer Burford, who wasn't supposed to be out there, mind you, know their blitz pickup and aren't getting bullied every single play, you've won 2 Super Bowls in the past 5 years. So I don't think I get it. Tackle, Colton McKivitz, we don't like him. It's guard. Guard is the issue, or at least it has been when you've lost in the Super Bowl. That's the position they had to address, hence why they picked Dominic Pooney instead of Rosengarten. Hence why they went Kingston over a tackle or over a tight end or over a defensive tackle on the defensive side of the football. Like, I get it. It frustrates me too that I would have liked them to take a tackle. I expected them to take a tackle, but it's not like they can't go in free agency once the $18 million off the book and say, hey, Charles Leno, who was in Washington for the past 6-7 years, play right tackle or be our backup. Hey, Andrus Peat, who was with the Saints, come at least be our backup right tackle. They haven't addressed that position yet. But look at what they've done this offseason. They bring back Feliciano. Aaron Banks is still there. Burford's still there. They re-signed Ben Barch to a larger deal and give him guaranteed money. Nick Zakel's there. Brendel's now there. And you add Kingston and Pooney to that room. All because they realize we have to insulate the interior to avoid going into a game saying, oh my God, my starter's out, and Spencer Burford and Matt Pryor's out there on the right side saying, well, we can't last a single snap. And then Brock Purdy gets hurt. So I get you want tackles. They're not getting the tackle. They extended McKivitz for a reason to buy them more time to find a tackle.
I think they knew where they were drafting. And I think they knew that it would be a reach to just say, well, we need a tackle at 31, so we're drafting a tackle. If the guy can't beat out who you have on your roster or isn't significantly better, then why do you draft them? And the Niners looked at it like that, I think, and they're better for it. You're right. If anything, I think they end up. I don't even think they go the draft route. I think they go free agency once Trent Williams is gone. And why give away picks when you can stay where you are? Zoe81 says he said he's playing 2 more years. We'll see. We'll see. He's injured every year. So
I hope so.
Me too.
I really hope so.
Last man drafted. Whoop, sorry. Pick 251, round 7, linebacker Tatum Bethune. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm someone, and not to pat myself on the back, but the Niners did take 3 players in my 4 mock drafts that I did leading up to the draft and put out on social media. They took 3 players that I mocked to them: Ricky Pearsall, Isaac Grendo, and Tatum Bethune. And the reason why I liked Bethune, and this linebacker class was not great, it really wasn't. But the reason why I like Bethune in the 7th round, one, you avoid the undrafted free agency, opening a door for him to sign elsewhere, but he's really good in coverage. Really good in coverage. 38 passer rating when targeted his last year at FSU. He has 4.69 speed, and he can play not just zone coverage, but he has the fluidity to play in man coverage. Plus, he also plays the mic. So I think he just raises that floor in the linebacker room as a 7th round pick, where you have Fred Warner. He's all pro Fred, one of the best in the entire league. Greg Greenlaw's injury's up in the air. You hope he gets back healthy. If he doesn't, that's why Devondre Campbell's there. Then you have a whole lot of what ifs and could be's and D. Winters and Jalen Graham. You got DFF in that room. I think they signed somebody else from the Cardinals. I'm forgetting his name, but they have a whole lot of questions there, and there's no promise Devondre Campbell even is a starter. He was really bad last year for Green Bay. Now there's context behind that, but he could struggle. And so, and keep in mind, he wasn't their first pick. They wanted Michael Kendricks, who went to Dallas. Yeah. So I think Bethune comes in and he gives you experience playing Mike linebacker in man, in zone coverage. And Johnny Holland has said, if you can cover, we want you here. We like you as a prospect. So I don't know how high of an impact he'll be. He isn't a high ceiling player, but I know Brock Purdy was picked in the 7th round. Don't expect that every single season.
No, people need to relax on that. Right, that's a 1 in a 1 million chance.
But that isn't to say that a 7th round pick couldn't, be a player for you. And I think if he's pushing players like DFF and Jalen Graham at the end of the depth chart, making your floor higher, that's a good player. And I think, he's a good tackler, fine in coverage. He'll probably need a year or 2, which is what you expect. So I like this pick a lot, to be honest with you.
Media says Ezekiel Turner was the one that we signed from the Cardinals. Thank you, 49er Media.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're so kind, coming in here and helping us.
We need it.
UDFAs.
UDFAs. My favorite.
I'm sorry, the best last name if you're a religious person. Tanner Mordecai.
Oh yeah.
Come on. Just because of his last name, he needs to be kept on this team as like a scout team quarterback. Tanner Mordecai.
Mustafa and Mordecai this year.
Dude, really? Running back Cody Schrader, Tariq Owens. People were dying for all these picks of all these players that once played in the NFL.
Players.
all these legacy players, all these nepotism picks. It's like, guys,
Okay,
if they suck at football, no offense, like they suck according to pro standards. I don't care if it's Joe Montana or Tom Brady's son. I'm not drafting them.
well,
Any of these players, anybody stand out to you?
yeah, I don't know if any of them make the team, but when the Niners tell you things, you read it, and it kind of gives you an indication of where they believe their money is. A player like Evan Anderson from FAU, defensive tackle, going back to the Jarrett Kingston pick, and even Tatum Bethune, man, I was like, where is the run stuffing defensive tackle?
Right.
I get you went and got Malik Collins, but Eric Armstead's gone. Hargrave is a pass rushing defensive tackle.
Yep.
You gotta find the run stuffer. You went and signed Jordan Elliott, who is fine. He had a really good year last year for Cleveland, but is he going to replicate that this year? There's at least question marks on his game. And so I was like, where is the guy? Where is the guy? And I think Evan Anderson, when this team gave him $280,000 guaranteed as an undrafted free agent, I said, oh, okay, like that's interesting. And he's 6 foot, 320 pounds as a true senior at FAU, had 89 tackles and 84 stops as a defensive tackle over 4 years
That's
at
insane.
FAU. He almost had as many stops as tackles over 4 seasons. He had 27 stops last year alone. A true run defending defensive tackle. He's not going to give you anything when it comes to pass production, but he's at least guaranteed a practice squad spot if it's possible, and he makes it past waivers. But man, Kalia Davis is a massive health question, and I would not be surprised if Evan Anderson, I won't say he finds himself in the rotation, but this team likes to carry, 5-6 defensive tackles. Evan Anderson could be that guy, and I would go, yep, that makes sense. He fills a need, he fills a void. And when you give someone $280,000 guaranteed and you watch him doing backflips in the pool, this kid's
insane.
like Drake Jackson. Like, what is going on? And he's 320 pounds. Like, whoa.
Bro, 6 foot plus 320. He was a lot heavier, they said at one point.
Yeah.
He was way bigger. I can't do backflips. I can't. I'm 6'3", 290 of unhealthy weight. I couldn't do a backflip when I was a teenager, but that's insane. Listen,
Crazy.
when I think of him, I think of a 3-4 defense and a nose tackle. Like the Niners haven't had themselves a really just humongous interior defensive tackle in quite a long time that has any kind of push.
Like Isaac Sopoaga.
I loved Isaac Sopoaga.
Like,
yeah.
Whoa.
Ted Washington.
Would you count Ray McDonald in that room? I know he has kind of a.
He was
the name is
Ray McDonald. That was like when I think of those names, I think of a team that was just gutted and went from being a contender to an also ran.
Right.
Ray McDonald and Justin Smith and Alden Smith and Navarro Bowman. Yeah,
great times.
I don't want to think of those times. It was so depressing. That's why I think like people don't understand how, the Niners, the way they draft and the way they do things. Like if you want to elongate, so you don't have just like a couple year window like they did with Harbaugh, you got to hit. So, I don't ever want to revisit those days.
They're fun, but really sad.
Switching over a little bit before we get out of here to the Aiyuk situation. There's a lot of talk that he was going to be signed after. I don't know who came up with the report, but I heard it a couple places that he was going to be signed after free agency. It didn't happen. Now they're saying post draft looks like they don't want to get it into July like the last time with Bosa or Debo. Any predictions on the signing of Aiyuk sooner rather than later, or is it more par for the course of what we've seen in the past?
I mean, you want to get it done before players like Justin Jefferson sign, and but because like Jefferson's gonna be the cap, right? So like once Jefferson signs, does it raise Aiyuk's value? I'm not sure, but it certainly it gives you a better indication of the in between. I would like to think that when AJ Brown re-signed or signed an extension during draft night, it was like $84 million guaranteed over 3 years. People were saying, wow, Ayuk's getting that. He's not getting $84 million guaranteed. And I don't even think AJ Brown is better than Jefferson, or, Brown's great, but like, he ain't top 5. I'm sorry, he's just not. But he's getting big money and he's really productive for that team. So it makes sense for the Eagles to do that, to keep that core together. But I think the sweet spot for Ayuk is around, $70 million, $68 million guaranteed, slightly over Deebo Samuel. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown signed. The Lions feed Amon-Ra St. Brown like what. Every play, Amon-Ra. That's not what Ayuk is to the offense. So Ayuk may come in with these high numbers in San Francisco, I'm sure, and this is probably what's holding them up. Is like, yeah, but you're not that in the system. Like, you aren't never going to be that here. But then I think the conversation enters of, well, if Deebo's gone in 1 year's time, maybe. But I have a hard time believing that, for Justin Jefferson's sake, he will hold out until he gets paid. Good for him. I can see Ayuk doing the exact same thing. That said, I think I've told you this before. I don't think San Francisco's unafraid to find Brandon Ayuk. They'll waive the first week or so if he's not here, but he ain't Nick Bosa.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you said that the last time we streamed. They're like, he's not Nick Bosa. They will find him. And eventually those fines catch up and players will return.
and I think he'll make up that money. It isn't to say they're not going to do good by him. They will.
Right.
But it's like they're going to say, Brandon, like, especially after how last year went, being that close, but also watching Nick Bosa and his body not being right for the first half a season. But I just think San Francisco isn't afraid to let these things play out if it means saving $5-10 million off the books, knowing that could equal 3 or 4 players to sign and fill out the roster. Now, I don't think Ayuk signed next week. I don't think he signs in the next month. But as soon as you get into training camp and the media starts coming in, it becomes a story. And, I think Ayuk wants to be there. If Ayuk was disgruntled, he wouldn't have texted John and Kyle saying, Ricky Pearsall, fire pick. Like, I think that, like, Ayuk is showing more desire to stay with the 49ers than Deebo Samuel ever did. Didn't ask for a trade. He wants to be here. He likes the team. I think Ayuk is showing us, like, his agent is going out there pre-draft, which would easily impact the conversations in regards to trade value they can get or the money he gets, and saying, no, we didn't ask for a trade. No, that's not true. 2 offers on the table on crazy rumors and reports. Like, what agent does that?
Yeah, it's usually the opposite. If anything,
exactly.
Rumors, like, agents like to feed the rumor mill and get their players' number up by saying, like, oh, there's 6 teams that want to make for a trade for him right now that are willing to part with whatever. And it's like, that's how it usually works. The fact that his agent is doing actually really good by the Niners more than by Ayuk. Yeah, Ayuk, after the Super Bowl, I was emotional watching him break down.
Yeah.
He's a Niner for life for me.
Okay.
It mattered to him.
Yeah.
It hurt. Like, there's some players that, like, they can't wait for the offseason to start going to Cabo or wherever they're going. You could tell, like, I felt for the guy. And I was pretty emotional myself. So I'm all for Ayuk getting his money. I did say this on Twitter, though. As good as he is, he ain't $30 million a year good. Okay. He's a really good player, but I don't know if he's in that echelon of a Justin Jefferson.
No, I don't think so.
I think he's a rung below. I think Diggs is better than him, and maybe trying to think of another receiver that, I mean, like, I love I love Ayuk to death, but
yeah,
I got to be real. Like, if I had to look at his game compared to other players, I mean, like you said, he doesn't get fed. I mean, look at Puka Nacua and freaking Cooper Kupp. They get that's all they throw to. They don't throw to anybody else.
Yeah,
he doesn't get that kind of a production.
And he never will here. It's just the way the offense is run.
They have too many weapons, and you're right. They don't run that kind of offense. They don't have a drop back. And that's the one thing that gets me with the 49ers and even like the Dolphins is they built their team a certain way. They're not a team that can drop back 60 times.
No.
They're just not built that way.
No.
And this offense isn't built to have a quarterback drop back 50 times and throw 20 times to one guy, and he has 15 catches for 280 yards and 4 touchdowns. It's just not the offense that they run. This offense is all about setting up other stuff all the time. It's all it is. One play leads to another play, which will lead to a play in the fourth quarter, and it's like all of it connects, just like the way that they draft. Everything is like everything has like harmony with it. So yeah, I thought the draft was okay. I gave them people. There was a couple of people on YouTube who put up lists and were like, what letter grade. I gave them a B this year's draft.
Yeah,
B minus, B minus.
I agree. I was in between a C plus and a B minus. I really hated the Jared Kingston pick. I love the Malik Mustafa pick though. So, you kind of find yourself on the in between of like, was this a reach? I liked the player, but the position of some players, I was like, okay, like take Renardo Green, for example. Like if Christian Haynes hits for Seattle and he's their right guard or left guard of the future, and you just said, we're going to go cornerback here, you are going to get me saying like, you whiffed. Now, Green could be great, and I'm sitting here like, wow, what a great pick thinking ahead, Kyle and John. And that's how this works, right? We sit here and we have, and this is the one thing I always tell people, like, there's no promise that Caleb Williams is great. He could suck, and I'd be happy for it because that means the Bears are going to be bad again. There's no promise that Xavier Worthy, who the Chiefs had to give up a 4th-round pick and a 7th-round pick just to get it, is going to be better because he was drafted ahead of somebody. So I'm not someone who gets riled up outside of the Kingston pick, but, all these guys could be better in the NFL than they were in college. And I think the Niners of any team, Greenlaw, Kittle, Warner, are a really good example of that. You get a player you like a lot, fits the archetype, has the skill set you want, and you just utilize that to its nth degree. And that's what San Francisco does. Like, they find players that you would say, really? 3rd-round pick? 5th-round pick? Deebo Samuel, 2nd-round pick? Was it a reach? Probably not, but I don't think anyone saw Deebo being Deebo Samuel for this team and what he's become being a former All-Pro. So I don't get too riled up. I'd probably give him a B minus just because I still need to see some of these players translate their game to the NFL. Yeah. But I think that B minus can be a B plus in 6 months' time once I see these guys in person and go, wow, like there's something truly special here.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be in training camp. You're going to be watching close up. The draft's a crapshoot to me, and we can give them a B minus grade, and then they could totally fall on their face and have one of the worst drafts of all time. Like all the bulky drafts, every bulky draft was horrible, and that's why the Niners fell in disrepair for as long as they did, because they didn't know how to draft. I don't think that this particular group or set of front office people have that issue. So yeah, I'm quite happy. Would have been a lot more if they went and got an offensive tackle, but like the way you made it sound, in the way you kind of broke it down, this wasn't a really honest, the best draft for offensive tackle. So like, we'll see. Do they go next year and go get an offensive tackle via the draft? Does Trent Williams retire? Do they go free agency? You can't solve it all in one season. I would have loved to see another tight end that can catch the ball. Niners didn't go tight end in the draft. That would probably be my biggest disappointment, because I think George Kittle's on the downside of his career personally. I think he's more about the brand than the football, to be honest with you. You can tell that he's winding down his career. It just seems like he's really interested in doing a lot of stuff outside of the game, which is fine. But if that's the case, then you got to start looking to the future. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of their players, Trent, Kittle, on the other side of 30, mainly Kittle being a younger 30-year-old, but the more you play, the more you're banged up, the more your body starts to break down. And I think Kittle has plenty left in the tank, but when you hit 30, 29, Deebo Samuel, good example of this too, sometimes teams start to go, okay, you're not 23 anymore. You're not 22. You got a good 80 years out of you. And
yeah,
This will be, I think, Kittle's 8th year on the team. So it's not like he hasn't been here for almost a decade.
Yeah. Just
Like
think
the
of the
body
80,
breaks down.
like think of the 80s teams. They used to get rid of players early before they broke down and always had a guy ready to go right after or behind them. And it pissed off a lot of guys, but the Niners won 4 Super Bowls in a short amount of time in about
Exactly.
10, 11 years. So it worked. And I feel like the way that they draft and the way that they do things is kind of similar to that. They're always drafting and working on trying to get guys that can fill in and eventually step in once guys move on. So, brother, thank you so much for coming on. You said you were going to bring the fire because we had to start at 8:30. You did that. I feel way smarter having you on. You're always really, really informative. And I'm looking forward to doing something with you in the future. Probably maybe after your honeymoon or something or down the road. But I appreciate you coming through. Everybody in the comments, thanks so much. Pretty good amount of people in here today. So I appreciate that. We appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And anything going on with you on your YouTube channel or any of your content?
Yeah, we actually just yesterday released my Ricky Pearsall breakdown, and we're going to break down every single Niners draft pick in the next few weeks, leading up to my wedding. And so hopefully I can take some time off after that and go be married and do the other things that come along with that and get our house all set up. But
Nice.
went through the UDFAs in one video and broke those guys down, who I like, who I don't like. But yeah, just got a lot of Niners draft content headed people's way to make them smarter, hopefully, and inform them of who the Niners just picked and put on their team. Thank you so much, Niner Media. It's been a long time coming. 6 years of long distance is finally over, so we're almost there.
Yeah, I'm actually in the midst of a long distance thing, but
there you go.
We'll see. It's tough. So
it's hard. Very hard.
But if you have you have an example of something that worked out, so hopefully it's the same for me. But everybody have a great night, everyone. Take care and keep in touch on the community tab if anything comes up content wise. But I might not be doing anything much until schedule drops. So, but I'm looking forward to doing something with you in the future, man. So I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Just give me a DM, give me a text, whatever you got.
Definitely. Take care, everybody.